and Annapolis, Maryland. So we already know two Muslims that arrived in Annapolis, Maryland, Job ibn Dijallo and now Kunta Kinte. The next thing that we want to talk about is the Muslims' first political activity. Was done in 1753. It was a group of two Muslims. One name was Adel Connor and the other one was named Muhammad Mahmud. They petitioned the government all in Arabic, stating that they fought in the Barbary Coast War and got captured and were sold into slavery. And where they agreed to come over here and work as indentured servants for 7 years, and they were sold to another man named LaRouche, and we worked them for 15 years. They wrote all in Arabic, petitioned the government for their freedom, and they won their freedom. His name is Adel Connor, and you see the Mahmud. And then it was all done in Arabic, from the Arabic, and this is just the English translation of it. And this became known as the Moorish Sundry Act. Then there was another group of 10 Muslims in 1790 came and they got free from what they call the Moorish Sundry Act. The law of the land stated that if you was a Moor or a Turk and your country had a relationship with the King of England, you had the right to be free. You couldn't own slaves, but you had the right to be free. And then we started researching, we found a lot of Muslims over here in America from overseas. The next group of events in the 1700s, we found that Muslims fought even in the American Revolutionary War. We found 6 different Muslims names or people with Islamic last names. Yusuf bin Ali, who fought with Joseph bin Heli in the Sumter, South Carolina area. He was a Revolutionary War hero. We found a brother named Babbitt Muhammad, who was a corporal in the Revolutionary War, and his records dating in 1775 to 1783. Peter Salim and Salim Poor were known African-American Revolutionary War heroes. They put up these postage stamps for them. Salim Poor, and what they would say Selim Poor, and Peter Salim. But what happened is that Peter Salim changed his name. Once he agreed to fight in the Revolutionary War, he got his freedom. And his slave name was Bucksminster. He changed it to Salim. A Jewish man asked him, said, I know what that name means. It means shalom. Where did you get that from? He said, I got it from the guys from the dock in Boston. And he took on the name Salim, but we call it Selim. So these are Revolutionary War heroes. We also find that in American history is that Morocco was the first country to acknowledge America's freedom and independence. We find some of our founding fathers having early relationships with Tunisia, Libya, Algiers, and Morocco. This is a letter from the Sultan of Morocco in 1788 to the President George Washington. And this is the copy of George Washington's letter back to the Sultan of Morocco. What happened is George Washington wanted him to help him establish a peace treaty with Morocco, Algiers, Tunisia, Libya, so they could have free waterway rights through the Barbary Coast Wars. Like if you look at some of the movies now, talk about the pirates and the Barbary Coast Wars, there was many battles that many Americans and many other Europeans was captured and enslaved in Algiers and Libya and parts of Morocco, or what they call the Barbary Coast Wars. It was because some of these Barbary Coast Wars and some of the tactics that was used that the Navy, the U.S. Navy, was developed and strengthened. To the point that even with the Marines, their song, their hymn song, goes from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That sword or the saber that they got, when they arrived and conquered the Bay of Algiers, was when they got that sword. And this is where they still carry it today. So we find an early influence in the relationship there. We also find, this is the English translation of the treaty that was done. You find John Adams, 1787, and Thomas Jefferson's signature. These are some of your founding fathers. So you find an early relationship with them. And this is where I believe that Thomas Jefferson got that Quran that was used when Congressman Ellison was sworn into the Hall of Congress. Inshallah. Now, the next, and then we move into the 1800s. There's quite a few personalities that came about. Yar Mahmud was one of the better-known personalities that lived in the Washington, D.C. area. He was a free Muslim. He was known for praying, for fasting, for wearing his kufi. He invested in a couple of banks, which failed. He had owned some property, a hauling business. He's a well-known person to the point that Charles Wilson Peale, who was a famous painter, painted his painting. This painting hangs up in Philadelphia Historical Society today.
MashaAllah, and he got a very stylish kufi on.
Yes, sir.
Very nice.
And then this is another painting that was done by him, by this brother Simpson. This painting hangs up in Georgetown Public Library today, which was burnt down. But the librarian saved this painting. This was his major concern. So these are two paintings that we have of well-known Muslim. This is his census, his 1820 census. You see his name here, Yarl Mahmoud. And this is letting you know that this is the free females and the free males. And he had a female living with him also. Another personality that we find about in the 1800s or the early 1800s is these communities that was led by, there was two communities, to say the truth, and both of them was led by these brothers named Bilal. One name was Bilali Muhammad, who led over 450 men on this island called Sapo Island. During the War of 1812, Bilal told his slave master, look, he got 80 men to help defend this island. I cannot count on the Christian slaves that you own. So he identified at least 80 of them being Muslims. So what that means, in 1812, then we got a Muslim community. And this is why we say this is the first Muslim community that we came aware of, and it was led by this brother Bilali Muhammad, who became known as Ben Ali. This is his writings. It's a 13-page book that's left in Athens, Georgia today, University of Georgia. They have this there today. They have some of the descendants that we found that still live there today. With Bilal. There's a book that the government did in 1930s, interviewing these people, descendants of Bilal. And many of these descendants, they became known as Gullah people. Those people that believe in Allah. They call them Gullah. And these are people that are what you'll find them in what they call the Sea Islands, or the coastal islands of Georgia, South Carolina, and some parts of North Carolina that has some of these traditions and roots that they still maintain. And there's another personality named Sali Bilali. Same time as Bilal, he was also a plantation manager of another island. Sali Bilali was a plantation of, he had 500 men. Some of the better descendants that come out of that island was Jim Brown, the famous football player. He comes from that island. You also find Robert Abbott, who started the Chicago Defender newspaper, the largest African-American newspaper at the time. He was a descendant of Sali Bilali. And then in between these two islands, you know, we learn in Islam about the story of Bilal ibn Rabah. Allah be pleased with him. When he converted to Islam, you know, his slave man, he was a slave, just like many of us was enslaved. His slave master put a rock on his chest and tortured him. And all he could say was ahad, ahad, ahad. Then when he could say that no more, he put up the one finger. In between these two islands. And then, you know, Muslims today, when they come in Jawsa, they're saying Tajahud, they put up the one finger. And what we find is that when I came here, in between these two islands, on the mainland, one tombstone with one finger on it, and his name was Sambo Swift. And that was really touching. Then we started traveling all the way down the country.
So when you find these tombstones with the one finger, that indicates this person was a Muslim?
Well, at least believed in Tawheed. No matter what y'all did to me, we believed in the oneness of God. Now, what I've, since then, we found them all like in the Georgia and the coastal area. And Samuel Swift tombstone was facing east. Then we found them in Canada, Maine, New Jersey, all up and down, even up in Maryland, in areas where no African Americans didn't live. Then we found them in Indiana and in Illinois. So what we found then, now I'm finding is that not only African American Muslims did this, but Muslims from Eastern European, Muslims from all around the country started doing this, and we'll talk about them as we go further. As I was saying, you know, Bilal, you know, he was a leader of a community, and we found these tombstones with the one finger on it, which represented the Tawheed. And we found them all up and down the East Coast, Georgia, North Carolina, Canada. You're saying with this tombstone, this is that tombstone that we found with the one finger on it. And as I was explaining earlier, you know, all Muslims that know the story about Bilal ibn Rabah and his suffering, you know, I saw the same symbolism that the people that were brought here and the suffering, so no matter what they did to him, they still kept that same consciousness of the oneness of God. These are some of the houses that they built out of sand and seashells and limestones. Some of them used the star. Now, this is one of the daughters of Bilal that we talked about, Benna. You know, we know Benta, his daughter. Now, some of the other personalities that we found in America, they just did, PBS just did a movie about. Abdul Rahman, Prince Among Slaves. He was captured as a child. Him and his father took a European ship doctor.